Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more.
Lieutenant Alison Brower had her head slumped over some forms when the door to her office swung open. 3 of the dimension-hopping teens stood in the doorway. She jumped to her feet, clearly startled. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. "Funny, we were about to ask you the same thing, demon woman," Kylie shot back, her tone forceful. "What are you going to do with Jack?" Michaela added, revealing their motive. The lieutenant was caught off guard. "What do you mean? How dare you? What is this all about? You're going to lock him up and use him as your little plaything in some mental institution, aren't you?" Kylie moved toward the desk. "No, we're not. Why would you think that?" Lieutenant Brower asked, confused. "You've got all these superhumans running around that you lock up. Why not lock up a transsexual?" Stephen finally said, his words blunt. Lieutenant Brower stepped back, studying the teens. They were a mix of anger and fear. She knew they were trying to protect their friend but wasn't sure how to explain the course of action that had been set in motion. "Look, your friend is probably being interviewed right now. Why don't you wait a while and talk to him once it's over?" The teens took a step back, confusion overtaking their expressions. "So, you're not going to lock Jack up and throw away the key?" Stephen asked, his voice filled with hope. "For God's sake, no," Lieutenant Brower said firmly. "We're a bit more advanced than your culture. We have methods for helping, not incarcerating." She added, "Now, head back upstairs and wait." "Okay." The 3 teens, still confused, made their way out. Odd society, Lieutenant Brower thought as she returned to her paperwork. To think they'd actually lock someone up who's already been trapped in the first place. A soft knock sounded on Jack's door as Daniel and Trent poked their heads in. Jack, still working through the booklet, motioned for them to come in. They both approached his bed. "Hey, how's it going?" Trent asked. "Yeah, man, what's up?" Daniel added. Jack chuckled. "Just taking a test." "What?" Daniel looked confused. "We finished ours about half an hour ago." "Really? Damn, you guys are fast." Jack shook his head. "Hold up a sec," Trent suggested. Jack paused as he picked up the booklet. Trent read the cover, keeping Jack's place with his finger. "Analysis battery number 1174. We had number 1206. That's strange. You think the girls and Stephen got the same one as us or Jack?" Daniel asked, now intrigued. "I don't know," Trent answered, handing the booklet back to Jack, open to the page he'd saved. "Where are they? Aren't they with you guys?" Jack asked. "No, they left. Said they had something important to discuss with that lieutenant chick," Daniel reported. "That's weird," Jack shrugged, returning to his test. "Are you guys bothering my patient?" a female voice asked from behind Trent and Daniel. The 2 boys turned around and got their first look at Agent Klein. Trent, at least, was momentarily speechless. "No, just visiting," Daniel replied, but quickly corrected himself when he noticed the look she gave. "I mean, just leaving." "Much better, boys. I suggest you do," Agent Klein said firmly. Trent turned to Jack and whispered, "Dude, your doc is seriously hot." Daniel slapped him on the arm. "Do you remember the epiphany of the last few days, or are you just numb from the neck down?" Trent chuckled. "Sorry, Jack. I kind of forgot. See you later." The 2 boys tapped Jack's shoulder before leaving. Jack didn't watch them go, just kept focused on the test. He didn't notice Agent Klein close the door behind them either. Another hour passed before Jack finally finished all the questions. He buzzed the nurse with the remote on the bed and waited. Moments later, a young nurse entered and took the booklet. "I'll make sure this gets straight to Agent Klein," she said. "Thanks," Jack replied. As she left, he made himself comfortable and eventually drifted off to sleep. His dreams were disjointed, blurry at best. He couldn't make sense of any of them. Faces and memories, his parents' gravestones, the train ride to Kentucky, street fights, and the fall from the bridge all merged into a confusing mess. The images faded to black, and for a moment, it felt like his mind had settled. Then a new dream began. A spotlight flickered to life, and Jack squinted against the harsh light. When his eyes adjusted, he saw a silhouette of a girl. She was dressed in a cape, skirt, boots, and gloves, but the colors were unclear. She was slender but seemed stronger than she appeared. She leapt into the air, flying off, and the spotlight shone directly into his eyes. Jack jolted awake, sweating. He wiped his brow, feeling clammy. Regaining his breath, he looked out the window. The sun was just starting to rise, casting light on the buildings across the street. It was the same view as yesterday, and he began to wonder if the previous day's events had been a dream too, like the girl. The image of her silhouette was still vivid in his mind. What does it mean? He asked himself, but he couldn't fathom the answer. He hated himself for it. The image of her silhouette was burned into his memory. He slowly laid back down, staring at the ceiling, trying to hold onto the details before the memory slipped away. Lieutenant Brower's door suddenly swung open again. She had dozed off at her desk, but the noise roused her. Rubbing her eyes, she stretched. "Yes, what is it now?" she asked, thinking it was the teens again. "Lieutenant Allison Brower, NYPD," a man's voice asked. "I would be she. What's this about?" She looked up and met two U.S. Marshals, their badges clearly visible. "Ah, Marshal Bryan. What's going on?" "Lieutenant, you're to return to the precinct. This is now under federal jurisdiction." Marshal Bryan tucked his badge into his blazer. "If I may speak freely, when did this happen?" she asked, recognizing him now. She smiled. "Oh, hello, Jacob. No time for small talk, Ali. I need to see your files," Bryan said, "all business." "Why? What's going on that the Marshal Service has to get involved?" "Come on, Ali. A dimensional flux happened 2 nights ago, and you're asking me? Information isn't a high priority in Washington right now. I just got word. The DoD wants me to check it out and advise them." "Wait, the Department of Defense is involved in this? Why?" Marshal Bryan began flipping through the file box on Lieutenant Brower's desk, scanning the paperwork. "They're freaking out," he said. "It's not every day that a dimensional flux occurs and 3 of the FBI's most wanted vanish, only for 6 teenagers in swimsuits to take their place. I'm just here to sort through some theories." "Are the kids awake?" Lieutenant Brower shrugged. "I'm not sure. I haven't checked on them yet." "Is Special Agent Klein on staff?" "I believe she's resting at the hotel across the street. No idea what she's doing here, though. Nobody tells me anything, even though I'm supposed to be the babysitter. Don't sell yourself short, Allison. You've done well so far in this investigation." "Well, in that case, may I request to stay involved? You have a personal interest in these kids. Over the last couple of days, I believe we've had an epiphany. One of the teenagers, Jack, is about to have a breakthrough, I think." "What kind of breakthrough?" "Check the files, Jacob." Marshal Bryan scanned the documents. "A Federal Code 41? "Yes, sir, we suspect he's a bona fide transsexual. Agent Klein is supposed to return with the results at 0900. She's also scheduled an interview and possibly a serum injection. Inform her that I want to speak with her at the field office before she gets here." Lieutenant Brower nodded. "Yes, sir." Special Agent Klein stood in her hotel room, finishing her shower and preparing for the day ahead. She was an early riser, and today was no different. She looked into the bathroom mirror and read the digital clock by her bed, Sunday 6:40 a.m. "Good thing I don't go to church," she thought as she picked up her brush and started combing her wet hair. Just then, the phone rang. Sighing, she set the brush down and wrapped herself in her robe. By the second ring, she was at the phone. "Hello," she answered in a calm, professional tone. There are two gentlemen here to see you, came the receptionist's voice. Jacob Bryan and Andrew Mulligan, U.S. Marshal Service. Klein raised an eyebrow. When did the marshals get involved? Send them up. She hung up, continued getting ready, and took a few minutes to prepare. She didn't mind them seeing her with wet hair, but being practically unclothed was out of the question. She grabbed a suitcase, pulled out her underwear, then grabbed her suit carrier before heading back into the bathroom. She propped the door open so they could get in, then closed it behind her. A few minutes passed before there was a knock at the door. Yes, she called from the bathroom. U.S. Marshals, can we come in? Marshal Bryan's voice came from the other side. Certainly, just find a spot to sit. I'll be out in a minute. The two men entered. The younger one took a seat on the bed while Bryan leaned against the dresser. If you don't mind me asking, why are two federal marshals in New York and speaking to me? Klein asked, now fully professional. We're here about the temporal anomaly 2 nights ago, Marshal Bryan replied. The bathroom door swung open, and Klein emerged, dressed and glaring at them. Bullshit. Why would you be talking to me about that? We understand that a serum injection might be scheduled today. Is that true? Marshal Bryan asked, his eyes fixed on her. Maybe. But I haven't finished my evaluation yet. Hold off on that for now. Why? This teen deserves to be happy. We just need to sit down with the teens and fill out some identification papers. Then why not let me administer the serum, unless... What are you implying, Agent Klein? Is the DoD involved in this? Are you suggesting the McAllister series? That could kill them. I'm not implying that at all. We're just here to get them into the system. So they can be tracked, right? I need to speak with them first. Since I'm the first federal agent on the case, this is my call. All right, we'll follow your lead, but no serum injections until we get our orders. Klein scoffed. The injection will happen if there are any identification forms to fill out. I won't have the mess of name changes and confusion. Our hands are tied, Angela. If the orders come through, it's more pain for everyone. She caught on. Aha, so there is a McAllister series introduction planned? She gestured to the door. Don't let it hit you where the good Lord split you. Angela, don't make me pull rank on you. Get out. In Washington, D.C., at 7 a.m., the Secretary of Paranormal Activity paced around his office. An older man, probably in his late 40s or early 50s, he stared at a report sitting on his desk labeled Dimensional Flux Report. The door creaked open, and the secretary looked up to see a man in an exoskeleton of black armor walking in. The armor was designed to mimic human musculature, with major muscle groups prominently displayed. A red circle with a bird of prey was stamped on the chest, the wings extending beyond the circle. The man, seemingly in his late 20s, wore no helmet or mask. You asked to see me, Mr. Secretary, the armored man asked. Yes, Nighthawk. Have you heard anything about the New York incident? The secretary asked. The Department of Defense is involved in this. What for? Marshal Bryan started flipping through the files on Lieutenant Brower's desk, scanning the papers. They're freaking out, he said. A dimensional flux doesn't happen every day, and suddenly, 3 of the FBI's most wanted just vanish, replaced by 6 teenagers in swimsuits. I'm just here to help clear up some theories. Are the kids awake? Lieutenant Brower shrugged. I don't know, I haven't checked on them. Is Special Agent Klein around? She's probably resting at the hotel across the street. I have no idea what she's doing here. No one tells me anything, despite my role as the babysitter. Don't sell yourself short, Allison. You've been invaluable in this investigation so far. In that case, may I request to stay involved? You've got personal interest in these kids. Over the last 2 days, I believe we've uncovered something significant. One of the teens, Jack, is on the verge of a breakthrough, I think. What kind of breakthrough? Check the files, Jacob. Marshal Bryan read through the documents. A Federal Code 41? Yes, sir. We suspect he's a bona fide transsexual. Agent Klein is due to return with the results at 0900, and she's also arranged an interview and possibly a serum injection. Tell her I want to meet with her at the field office before she arrives. Lieutenant Brower nodded. Yes, sir. Special Agent Klein was finishing her shower in her hotel room, preparing for the day ahead. She always woke up early, and today was no exception. She checked the digital clock by the bed, Sunday 6:40 a.m. Good thing I don't go to church, she thought as she picked up her brush and started combing through her wet hair. Then the phone rang. She sighed, put the brush down, and wrapped herself in a robe. By the time the phone rang again, she was at the receiver. Hello, she answered in a professional tone. There are two gentlemen downstairs who would like to see you, the front desk clerk said. Klein frowned. When did the marshals get involved in this? Send them up. She hung up the phone and finished getting ready. She didn't mind them seeing her with wet hair, but she couldn't meet them in just her towel. She grabbed a suitcase, pulled out her underwear, then grabbed her suit carrier and went into the bathroom again. She left the front door open for the marshals to get in before she closed it behind her. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Yes, she called from the bathroom. U.S. Marshals, can we come in? Marshal Bryan's voice came from the other side. Certainly, just find a spot to sit. I'll be out in a minute. The two men entered. The younger one sat on the bed while Marshal Bryan leaned against the dresser. If you don't mind me asking, why are two federal marshals in New York and talking to me? Klein asked, now fully professional. We're here about the temporal anomaly 2 nights ago, Marshal Bryan answered. The bathroom door opened. Agent Klein stepped out, now dressed and glaring at them. Bullshit. Why would you be talking to me about that? We have reason to believe a serum injection might be scheduled today. Is that true? Marshal Bryan asked, his eyes focused on her. Maybe. But I haven't completed my evaluation yet. Hold off on that for now. Why? This teen deserves to be happy. We need to sit down with the teens and complete their identification papers. Then why not let me administer the serum unless? What are you implying, Agent Klein? Is the DoD involved in this? Are you suggesting the McAllister series? That could kill them. I'm not implying that. We're just here to get them into the system. So they can be tracked, right? I need to speak with them first. I'm the first federal agent on this case. I'm calling the shots. All right, we'll follow your lead, but no serum injections until we get our orders. Klein scoffed. The injection will happen if there are any identification forms to fill out. I won't deal with the confusion of name changes and the like. Our hands are tied, Angela. If those orders come through, it's more pain for everyone. She caught on. Aha, so there is a McAllister series introduction planned? She pointed toward the door. Don't let it hit you where the good Lord split you. Angela, don't make me pull rank on you. Get out. In Washington, D.C., at 7 a.m., the Secretary of Paranormal Activity paced in his office. An older man, possibly in his late 40s or early 50s, he stared at a report on his desk titled Dimensional Flux Report. The door creaked open, and the secretary looked up to see a man in a black exoskeleton entering. The armor was semi-anatomically correct, with major muscle groups displayed. The chest bore a red circle with a bird of prey design. The man appeared to be in his late 20s and wore no helmet or mask. You asked to see me, Mr. Secretary, the armored man asked. Yes, Nighthawk. Have you heard anything about the New York incident? The secretary inquired. Jack glanced up at the building where they had attempted their escape. A long wire dangled from the hospital, leading to the building across the street. He studied the route carefully, considering its safety. The wire hung high enough that they could land safely on the rooftop of the building, but the challenge was how to get across. Jack looked down, his usual method of finding answers. This time, he had one. I've got an idea, guys, he announced, starting to climb the building. "What the hell are you doing climbing a building?" Daniel asked, confused. "There's a wire up there we can use to get across to the other building," Jack explained, grunting as he struggled with the climb. The group looked over at the building across the street, which was about 200 feet away. Kylie and Michaela weren't too keen on the idea of crossing in hospital gowns and slippers, especially with someone possibly seeing them. They exchanged glances before looking back at Jack, who had reached a narrow ledge. He took off one slipper, placed it on the wire, and interlocked his hands. "We can cross this way. Just hold on to your slippers and keep your hands folded," Jack instructed. "No way in hell," Trent protested. "Got any better ideas?" "I'm listening," Jack retorted. Seeing no other option, the two girls began climbing to join Jack. Daniel shrugged. "He's got a point," he said, following the girls. "Hey, come back inside, kids. We're not here to hurt you," a voice called from the window. They turned to see the man in armor, his head sticking out of the window. "Go. Now," Trent shouted. Jack took a deep breath and, with a quick mental prayer, pushed off from the building. He slid down the wire, his grip loosening and accelerating. He landed safely on the other side. "Loosen your grip to go faster. Tighten when you're close to land," he called out. Michaela hesitated but followed Jack's instructions. She slid across, tightening her grip, and landed safely on the other side. The rest followed in order, with Trent being the last. He stumbled as he landed and fell to his knees, wincing in pain. "You okay?" Jack asked. Trent groaned. "Yeah, just racked my nuts on the way over." The group burst into laughter, but the mood quickly shifted as they began scanning the rooftop, putting on their slippers again. "So, now what, escape artist?" Stephen asked Jack. Jack pointed to a small shed at the far left. "We go downstairs." They bolted toward the door, but halfway there, the sound of an engine reached their ears. They looked up to see Nighthawk in a hovering craft. "Pick up the pace, guys," Trent urged. Daniel reached the door first and opened it, ushering everyone inside and slamming it shut behind him. They were all out of breath. "What now? How do we stop him from coming in?" Stephen asked. Everyone looked around, and Trent spotted an axe behind a glass panel. The inscription read, "In case of emergency, break the glass." He elbowed through the glass and grabbed the axe. "Will this work?" he asked. Daniel grabbed the axe, wedging it into the door. A red light began flashing above them. "Great, you set off the fire alarm," Kylie shouted. "This could work in our favor," Jack reassured them. "The building will clear out, and we'll be able to slip through unnoticed." "Let's hope you're right," Trent said, glancing up at Nighthawk's hovering craft. "He's right on our tail. Move it, now," Jack commanded. They ran down the stairs as quickly as possible, discovering the building was only 7 stories tall, so they didn't have much farther to go. "We need to find somewhere to hide and get some clothes. I'm freezing here," Daniel said. "No worse than us. I almost had an peak crossing that wire," Kylie admitted. "Cool." Trent laughed, amused. Jack kept his focus. He glanced through windows as they passed. Office space on the 7th floor, he noted. Health club on 6, dance and martial arts on 5. He suddenly stopped and bolted toward the 4th floor door. The others followed, confused, until they saw what was inside, a full clothing shop that spanned the entire floor. "Jackpot," Jack smiled. Everyone quickly got to work, browsing through the different sections of the store. The guys grabbed basic t-shirts and jeans that suited their personal styles. Michaela grabbed Jack's arm and dragged him along with herself and Kylie. "Come on, Jack. We're going to get you a disguise," Michaela giggled. Kylie glanced back. "All right, someone's got a plan. Care to share?" "What size are you, Jack?" Michaela asked. "I'd say large for t-shirts and 30 by 30 jeans, but what's going on?" Jack was a bit confused, but the realization hit him when he saw what department they were in. Daniel, Stephen, and Trent emerged from the dressing rooms around the same time, each having occupied one of the 4 stalls. "Come on, hurry up, dude," Trent called out to Jack. No answer came. "I don't think he's in there," Daniel observed. "Then where is he?" Stephen asked, scanning the room. Trent looked around, glancing out the windows. He spotted a police helicopter. "Crap, the cops are onto us." "Where'd Kylie and Michaela go?" "Obviously, the ladies' section," Stephen replied. "Let's go find them," Trent ordered. The 3 of them headed toward the back of the store, passing through the ladies' section, intimate apparel, and finally reaching the dressing rooms. They spotted Kylie leaning against a desk, reading a teen magazine. They stopped in front of her, puzzled. "What are you doing? The cops are going to storm this place any second, and you're reading Teen Vogue?" Trent exclaimed. "Where's Mick?" Kylie set down the magazine. "Hang on, I'll be right back," she said, getting up and walking toward the stalls. She called out, "Are you ready yet, Mick?" "No, just give us another minute," Michaela shouted from inside. Daniel, Stephen, and Trent exchanged glances, silently wondering what was going on. Kylie gave them a be patient look. Trent folded his arms, Daniel shoved his hands into his pockets, and Stephen sat down on the floor. Moments passed, and they heard stomping footsteps coming up the stairs. "Come on, Mick. We still need to find Jack," Trent shouted. Michaela appeared from behind the curtain. "Oh, we know where he is," she said with a smile. "May I present our new companion?" A nervous-looking, attractive brunette stepped around the corner. The guys all stood up and took notice. She wore brown-heeled boots, tight blue jeans with a brown leather belt, and a tan top with bell sleeves. Trent uncrossed his arms. "Who's she?" Trent asked. "Where the hell is Jack?" He spun around, scanning the store again. "Jack's not coming back," the mystery girl announced. There was something oddly familiar about her voice. "Holy crap, Mick. You can hardly tell," Kylie exclaimed, clearly excited. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Jack?" Trent turned around suddenly. "Where?" "Let's just go. We don't have much time," the girl said, leading the way. As they heard voices shouting orders on the other side of the store, the group ducked their heads and headed for the elevators. Not knowing if they would work, the mystery girl led them to a different set of stairs. She opened the door, signaling for them to hurry. They quickly followed, making more noise than they intended due to their new shoes. Trent's eyes widened. "What the hell? How did you pull that off so quickly?" The girl flashed a grin. "Mick did a fantastic job, don't you think?" Trent took a long look at her. "Damn, you look incredible as a girl." The girl rolled her eyes. "Figures," she muttered. Though flattered, she knew exactly how Trent would react. The group settled down to rest, chatting about what to do next, but the conversation inevitably kept returning to this newly revealed girl, who was no longer a mystery. In the clothing shop, Michaela had quickly found what they needed and, with her experience, pulled off the transformation flawlessly. The girl had been right when she said, "Jack's not coming back." Daniel suggested, "We should probably keep moving." "Oh really? And where are we going?" "I look like I'm carrying a stack of credit cards in a designer purse." The girl's voice strained a little, still adjusting to her feminine tone. Stephen nodded. "She's got a point, you know," he said, then apologized. "Sorry, Freudian slip. Do you have a name? I mean, I want to call you Jack, but you don't look like him." The girl paused and thought. "I don't have a name. I never really thought about it." "You've been considering transitioning, and you don't have a name?" Kylie seemed surprised. "Shouldn't that be a priority?" Michaela raised an eyebrow. "You kinda look like a Lauren, Megan, or Emma." Kylie nodded. "I'd add Alyssa or Carrie to that list." The group continued the name game, with everyone suggesting names. The girl threw in some of her own ideas. They spent hours playing, all while the streets grew quieter around them. The occasional distant siren or car alarm was all that broke the silence. Jack's knowledge had served them well, but still, the game went on. As the cold began to set in, the girl gathered some cardboard and newspaper, struck 2 rocks together, and after a few tries, managed to start a small fire. They all lay down on cardboard mats, continuing their game. You know, I keep coming back to Emma. I really like that name, Kylie said. I like it too. And it fits, look at her, Stephen added, motioning to the girl. The girl blushed. I think I have a middle name now. My mom once told me what she would have named me if I'd been born a girl. Oh yeah. What was it? Daniel asked, intrigued. Christine, the girl replied. Emma Christine Morgan. Yeah, it has a nice ring to it, Trent said thoughtfully. Michaela jumped up and motioned for the girl to do the same. That's it then. Congratulations, everyone, it's a girl. Her name is Emma Christine. She pulled the girl into a hug. Emma was overcome with emotion and cried happy tears. Everyone gathered around, giving her a hug. She sniffled, wiping her tears away, not wanting to ruin her makeup. The group's celebration passed down, and everyone eventually drifted off to sleep. Nighthawk's hover car touched down in a large metal hangar bay. The massive door shut behind him with a hiss as he climbed out. He was met by a young woman in her early 20s, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, with short but neatly styled blonde hair. Hey, Nighthawk. What brings you to Midnight Riders HQ? She asked. Hi, Freya. Is anyone still awake? I know it's late, Nighthawk replied. Yeah, Foresight and Volt are playing chess. Synapse is at the computer, as usual, and Raven's getting in her evening workout. Anything wrong? Have you heard about the dimensional flux from Friday night? Yeah, a bunch of high school kids in swimsuits found in an alley. The 3 fugitives disappeared, and they just showed up in their place. Well, those 6 teenagers were being held at Janssen Memorial Research Hospital. They ran several tests on them, and now the Department of Defense wants to artificially introduce the McAllister series into them. Freya's eyes widened. What made them come up with that idea? Nighthawk shrugged. They're dimension hoppers, so they're considered expendable. The DoD doesn't want to spend the money to make them legal citizens. Did they go ahead with it? They got spooked when I showed up. Before I arrived, Marshal Bryan and his partner had already been there. An FBI agent was supposed to oversee the whole thing. So there are that many federal agents involved. No wonder they got spooked. What happened next? They climbed out of a window on the 5th floor, zipped down a wire using their slippers for insulation, and made their way across to a building. The NYPD lost them in a clothing store. So you're here for help? Freya asked. There's not enough information to build a profile on them. The police searched a 1.5 mile radius and still couldn't find them. Follow me, Freya said. She led him out of the hangar and down a hallway, passing several offices. They greeted Synapse as they went by, and he joined them, intrigued by the situation. They reached the commons area, where Foresight and Volt were engrossed in a chess match. The rest of the group was curious to see Nighthawk. So what's going on? Volt, a muscular black man, asked. Yeah, what's the issue? Foresight, a man in his 30s, added. I'm sure you've heard about the dimensional flux from Friday night. Those 6 teenagers were subjected to a rigorous testing session. 2 U.S. Marshals, 2 of the worst examples, and an FBI psychoanalyst were involved. The FBI agent was supposed to be in charge, but the Marshals had their own agenda from the DoD, Nighthawk explained. What kind of agenda? Raven asked. The DoD wants to artificially insert the McAllister series into them. They consider these kids expendable because they're dimension hoppers. The teenagers didn't know about this hidden agenda, right? Foresight asked. How the hell did you pull that off so quickly? Trent sputtered. Mick did a great job, don't you think? The girl grinned at him. Trent sized her up. Damn, you look great as a girl. She rolled her eyes. Figures. She was flattered, but knew exactly how Trent would respond. The group settled in to rest, discussing what to do next, but the conversation kept circling back to the mystery girl, who was no longer a mystery. Michaela had found everything they needed in the clothing shop and, thanks to her experience, had pulled off the transformation flawlessly. The girl had been right when she said, "Jack's not coming back." "We should probably keep moving," Daniel suggested. "Oh, really? And where exactly do you think we're going? I look like I'm carrying a pile of credit cards in a designer purse." The girl's voice strained slightly, still adjusting to her feminine tone. Stephen nodded. "She's got a point." Okay, I get it," Trent said, apologizing. "Do you have a name? I want to call you Jack, but you don't exactly look like him." The girl paused for a moment, thinking. "I don't have one. I never really thought about it." "You've been considering transitioning and you don't have a name?" Kylie seemed surprised. "That should be a priority." Michaela raised an eyebrow. "You kind of look like a Lauren, Megan, or Emma." Kylie nodded. Alyssa or Carrie could work too. The group continued playing the name game, throwing out suggestions, and the girl even added a few ideas of her own. They spent hours chatting as the street around them quieted. The occasional siren or distant shout was all that broke the silence. Jack's insights had served them well, but the game went on. As the cold began to set in, the girl gathered some cardboard and newspapers, struck 2 rocks together, and managed to start a small fire. They used pieces of cardboard as makeshift mats, lying down and continuing their conversation. "You know, I keep thinking Emma is the perfect name," Kylie admitted. "Yeah, it fits. Look at her." Stephen agreed, motioning toward the girl. The girl blushed. "I think I've decided on a middle name. My mom once told me what she would have named me if I was born a girl." "Oh yeah? What was it?" Daniel asked. "Christine," the girl answered. "Emma Christine Morgan has a nice ring to it," Trent remarked thoughtfully. Michaela jumped up, motioning for the girl to stand with her. "That's it. Congratulations, everyone, it's a girl. Her name is Emma Christine." She pulled the girl into a hug. Emma, overwhelmed with emotion, cried happy tears. The group surrounded her, offering hugs and congratulations. "Thanks, you guys," she sniffled, wiping her tears away. After a while, everyone settled down and fell asleep. Nighthawk's hover car landed with a soft hum in a large metal hangar. The doors closed behind him as he climbed out, greeted by a young woman in her early 20s, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. Her short blonde hair was well styled. "Hey, Nighthawk. What brings you to Midnight Riders HQ?" she asked. "Hi, Freya. Is anyone still awake?" "I know it's late," Nighthawk replied. "Yeah, Foresight and Volt are playing chess. Synapse at the computer, as usual, and Raven's getting her evening workout in." "Anything wrong? Have you heard about the dimensional flux from Friday night?" "Yeah, a bunch of high school kids in swimsuits found in an alley. The 3 fugitives vanished, and they appeared in their place. Well, those 6 teenagers were being held at Janssen Memorial Research Hospital. They ran several tests on them, and now the Department of Defense wants to artificially introduce the McAllister series into them." Freya's eyes widened. "What made them come up with that idea?" Nighthawk shrugged. "They're dimension hoppers, so they're considered expendable. The DoD doesn't want to waste the money to make them legal citizens." "Did they go ahead with it?" "They got spooked when I showed up. Before I got there, Marshal Bryan and his partner were already on the scene. An FBI agent was supposed to oversee the process. With that many federal agents, no wonder they got spooked." "What happened next?" "They climbed out of a 5th-floor window, slid down a wire using their slippers for insulation, and entered a building across the street. The NYPD lost them in a clothing store." "So you came here for help?" Freya asked. "There's not enough information to create a profile. The police searched a 1.5-mile radius and couldn't find them." "Follow me," Freya said, leading him down a hallway. They passed several offices, greeting Synapse as they passed. He joined them, curious about the situation. They reached the commons area, where Forsyth and Volt were absorbed in a chess game. The rest of the group was intrigued to see Nighthawk. "So what's going on?" Volt, a muscular black man, asked. "Yeah, what's the issue?" Forsyth, a man in his 30s, added. "That dimensional flux from Friday night? Well, those 6 teenagers underwent a thorough testing session. 2 U.S. Marshals, 2 of the worst examples, and an FBI psychoanalyst were involved. The FBI agent was supposed to be in charge, but the Marshals had their own agenda from the DoD, Nighthawk explained. "What kind of agenda?" Raven asked. "The DoD wants to artificially insert the McAllister series into them. They see the kids as expendable because they're dimension hoppers. The teenagers didn't know about this hidden agenda, right?" Forsyth asked. The Midnight Riders quickly assembled at an abandoned campsite. Forsyth descended from a wire he'd fashioned into a gun, Synapse crawled around a corner on the brick wall, Raven dropped down from a rooftop, Freya skidded to a halt on her white, ornate motorcycle, and Volt stopped after running at an incredible speed. Forsyth retracted his wire and surveyed the area. "What does the chronograph read?" he asked. Synapse checked his watch. "About 7:45. They were here half an hour ago. They headed north, down the alley. Probably in search of food. Should I scout ahead, see if I can locate them?" Volt asked. "Yes, that's a good idea. Look for bakeries or small grocery stores. They probably went for breakfast." "Great, I'll find the Starbucks," Raven joked, before leaping into the air and flying off. Volt sped off again with his trademark blinding speed, while Freya performed a quick wheelie, following closely behind. "I'll just hang with you if that's all right," Synapse suggested. "Perfectly fine," Forsyth replied. Synapse dropped off the wall and merged with Forsyth's body. "Don't get too comfy in there," Forsyth teased as he fired his gun and zipped through the town, using his twin guns for navigation. The 6 teens were enjoying bagels and coffee, courtesy of the coffee shop owner. They were all tired and sore. Michaela complained about needing a shower, which Kylie and Emma agreed with. The boys decided to tough it out. Suddenly, a loud sonic boom echoed from nearby. Everyone covered their ears. A tall, muscular man in a strange spandex suit entered through the door, scanning the room. His eyes locked onto the 6 friends. Kylie Moss, Michaela Drake, Trent Patterson, Stephen Coa, Daniel Page, and one other. "Are you the teens I'm looking for?" Volt asked, reading each name off as the corresponding teen froze. Trent buried his face in his hands. "Great, now who's after us, the CIA?" "I'm not CIA. I'm with the Midnight Riders," Volt clarified. Emma stood up. "Wait a second. Did you answer a call for a 2146 and 1013 on Friday night?" Volt stepped back, momentarily stunned. How did she know, he thought. "No, not me. That was Forsyth and Raven." "How do you know that?" he asked. Emma smiled. "Just verifying your story. She's the mastermind, just like Forsyth said," Volt thought. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, stepping outside. He looked around for Freya. Not spotting her, he pressed a button on his bracer. "Midnight Riders, this is Volt. You found them, good work. What's the location?" Forsyth's voice crackled over the comm. "Southside Baked Goods and Coffee House on 63rd Street, Volt replied, heading back inside. "We're on our way." Volt turned his attention back to the teens, who looked tense and unsure of what to make of the encounter. The shop owner came from the back room and exchanged glances with Volt. "Well, hello Volt. What brings you here this morning?" the owner asked. "Just picking up some missing persons," Volt replied. "You mean these kids here?" the owner asked, pointing at the teens. "Yep," Volt confirmed. Freya arrived outside with a screeching halt. Stephen and Daniel looked confused. "Did they do something wrong?" Stephen asked. "No, it's the government that's tried to do them wrong," Volt explained. "Really? No wonder they ran away," Freya said. "Yes, And I'm here to keep them safe. The teens looked up at Volt in surprise. You mean you're not taking us back to that hospital? Stephen asked, hope flickering in his voice. Yes, we are. But we're not handing you over to the US Marshals, Volt confirmed. Good, those guys freaked us out, Daniel admitted. Raven landed just outside. Michaela was the first to notice. I don't blame you for running after dealing with those two, Volt said to the group. Raven and Freya entered together, eyeing the teens. So, these are the ones? Raven asked. Yep, Volt nodded. Great work, Freya added. Synapse appeared to be falling from outside the window, rolling as he landed. Forsyth followed closely behind, reeling in his long cord. They both entered the shop after a moment. Forsyth moved past the group to examine the teens. He smiled. Well, hello, Kylie, Michaela, Daniel, Stephen, Trent, and, oh yes, we mustn't forget Emma, Forsyth greeted. Good morning. Freya scoffed. Why didn't you tell me the sixth one was a girl? Because she didn't know it yet. Emma raised an eyebrow. What are you two talking about? He wouldn't tell me who or what you were when we were preparing to find you, Freya explained. He just referred to you as our little controversy. Controversy? What? Emma asked, completely confused. Controversy of the soul, Emma. I assure you. Now, if you all could stand, we can take you back to Jansen Memorial. What if we don't want to go back? Trent asked as he stood. Do you want to risk dying from an unknown disease, young man? Forsyth asked. No, of course you don't. You'll be receiving vaccinations, including one for Emma. After that, you'll join us at our headquarters, where we'll finalize the identification paperwork. Sound fair? The 6 teens nodded and followed the 4 heroes to Nighthawk's hover car. A man in his late 20s, wearing a black sweatshirt, pants, boots, mirror-lensed sunglasses, and a lab coat, paced down a hallway of Jansen Memorial Research Hospital. Holding a clipboard full of paperwork, he scanned the hallways as he passed intersections. The coast is clear, he thought to himself as he moved forward. He rounded 2 corners, first left, then right, dodging nurses and EMTs in his path. His focus was unwavering as he concentrated on his goal. A nurse approached him. Doctor, we have a blunt trauma in room 6. We need your assistance, she said urgently. I can't, I'm headed to the lab to check some blood test results, the man replied without even looking at her. But doctor. He stopped and turned to address her. I have a patient in critical condition from hemophilia, and you're asking me to help with blunt trauma? Find an intern. He resumed walking, and the nurse, taken aback, quickly moved on with her duties. The man reached the lab, opened the door, and found another nurse behind the counter. She eyed him suspiciously. Can I help you, doctor? She asked. Yes, I need the files for. He flipped through the papers on his clipboard. Kylie Moss, Michaela Drake, Daniel Page, Trent Patterson, Stephen Coa, and Jack Morgan. She quickly gathered the files and placed 6 thin manila folders on the counter. Did Agent Klein send you? Yes, she asked me to collect these for their vaccinations tomorrow, he replied, emotionless. Here you go, doctor. Thanks. He smiled briefly as he took the folders and left, his first real emotion since entering the building. He stepped into an empty lounge and began flipping through the folders. He removed the final sections of the files and swapped them with pages from his clipboard. As he worked, he grinned wickedly. Once he had what he wanted, he placed the discarded papers back onto the clipboard and tucked the altered files into his arms. He then entered the elevator, pressing the number 3. The elevator ride was peaceful. As it ascended, a bell chimed, and the doors opened. He exited and walked toward the nurse's station. The young nurse behind the desk looked up. Hello, doctor. How can I help you? She asked. He handed her the folders. These are for the morning vaccinations, Agent Klein's orders. The nurse looked panicked. Of course, doctor. I'll make sure they're placed outside the patients' rooms right away. See that you do. He turned back toward the elevator. Once on the ground floor, he walked through the ER and out to the garbage area. Pulling out a cigarette, he lit it with his Zippo. Once it was burning, he discarded the lab coat, placed it on the clipboard, and set both on fire. He walked away, leaving them behind. Around the corner, he picked up the receiver of a payphone and dialed a number. "What happened?" came the voice on the other end. "The job's done. It's all taken care of." Jack was back in his hospital bed, looking less than thrilled. He had appreciated the short break but now found himself back in the hospital, unsure of what to expect. The Midnight Riders had assured him that they'd hold on to the outfit until the vaccinations were done. He was nervous about the idea of receiving treatments in this parallel world. He sighed deeply as Agent Klein entered the room. "Good morning, Jack. How are you today?" she asked with a smile. "Pretty good, I guess," he replied unenthusiastically. "Cheer up, it's about to get better. I just need you to make a few modifications and sign this form," she said, handing him a clipboard. Jack raised an eyebrow. "More forms?" He reluctantly took the clipboard and began reading. Name blank, height 5'5", undetermined weight, brown hair, green eyes. He looked up. "What's all this?" "It's about to be you. Just fill in the name and sign the paper," she explained. Jack still looked confused. "I'm still lost. Long day yesterday." She took back the clipboard and pen. "If you could name yourself, what would it be?" Jack thought for a moment and gave a loose smile. "Emma Christine Morgan." Agent Klein smiled at his cooperation. "You haven't practiced a signature yet, have you?" Jack blushed. "No, not yet. I just figured out the name while we were out." "Did your friends help you?" "Yeah, they gave me the first name. I came up with the middle name." "Good." She took out a stamp pad. "Now put your thumb here and press it onto the paper." "It won't change." Jack did as instructed. She took the form and motioned to the door, which opened slightly. The other teens rushed in. "We're here for you, Jess." Michaela smiled. "Yeah, the nurse told us they'll start the vaccinations and serum treatment soon." "How are you feeling?" Trent asked. "Okay, I guess. A little freaked out, though," Jack admitted. "Hang in there, all right? We'll see you on the other side," Daniel said with a reassuring smile. Michaela, Kylie, and Stephen gave him a final hug before Agent Klein ushered them out. Moments later, after hearing vacuum noises from the other rooms, a nurse entered Jack's room with 2 small vials. She walked up to his bed. "One's for the vaccination, and the other is the serum. The serum has a heavy tranquilizer, so you'll be out for a while," the nurse explained. Jack nodded as she injected the vaccination into his left shoulder, then swapped the vials and injected the serum into his right. He immediately felt himself slipping into unconsciousness. His muscles ached, and a strange burning sensation spread through his body. He drifted into sleep, Jonathan Christopher Morgan fading away. An hour later, Agent Klein was having a heated conversation with a nurse at the nurse's station, just down the hall from the 6 teens. "What do you mean the files were tampered with?" She glared at the nurse. "I checked them before the injections, but by the time I noticed the changes, the vaccinations had already started," the nurse replied meekly. "Oh my God, what did you notice was wrong?" Agent Klein demanded. "Well, some of them were a little thicker, and I saw the words McAllister series on some of the papers." Agent Klein's expression turned to a mixture of concern and shock. "Who gave you these papers?" "A doctor came up and said you wanted them placed outside the patient rooms. He was wearing a black sweatshirt, pants, and boots. He seemed really friendly." Just then, a blood-curdling scream echoed from one of the rooms. "Do you see what your mistake has caused?" she scoffed. "You're fired." She rushed down the hall, the scream piercing the air again. Jack woke up suddenly, a splitting headache consuming him. His vision was blurry, and he felt feverish and cold at the same time. His stomach churned painfully. Gripping his abdomen, he clenched his teeth and tried to fight the agony, but it only intensified. His bones cracked, and his muscles tore as the pain throbbed through him. His scream could have shattered glass, but it only grew louder. The pain was unbearable. His cries became even more horrifying, louder and more anguished than anything in a horror movie. Agent Klein rushed in with another syringe gun, moving quickly to his bedside. She injected him in the arm, and some of the pain subsided instantly. Jack's eyes met hers. "What the hell woke you up?" she asked, sounding concerned. "Headache, fever," he managed to say before succumbing to the pain and the tranquilizer once more. Oh my God, what have they done? Chapter 6, Initiations. Hours later, all 6 teens woke up in an unfamiliar place. They were lying on gurneys in a brightly lit room, much cleaner and more sterile than their previous hospital rooms. Kylie was the first to stir. "What the?" she muttered, looking around. Stephen rubbed his head. "Where are we?" "No idea," Trent replied, scanning the room in confusion. He groaned as he sat up, his body sore from the ordeal. Michaela sat up and rubbed her neck. "Ooh, I've got a terrible headache." "Must be from the vaccines," Daniel suggested. Kylie blinked. "This feels like a roll call, but there's one problem." "What's that?" Trent asked. "We're missing someone," she said, her eyes landing on the empty gurney. "Jess." Suddenly, Emma screamed loudly, causing everyone to jump in fright. She was sweating and breathing heavily. "Where am I?" she cried, a very distinct female voice coming from her. "What the?" She looked around in confusion. "Was that me?" Stephen stared at her for a moment. "Yeah, that was definitely you. You all right?" "No, I woke up in the middle of everything, the change, the vaccine, everything." She was still panting. "It was horrible and hurt like hell." "Just wait a month, honey," Trent joked, but the girls shot him glaring looks. Synapse entered the room just then. "Whoa, everyone's up. How's it going, guys? Feeling okay?" "No," the teens replied in unison. "Is the vaccine still in effect?" he asked, shaking his head. "Well, we've got some soup ready for you all in the commons area. And don't worry, Volt's gumbo isn't as bad as everyone makes it out to be. It's just a psych out." The teens groaned, slowly getting out of bed. They followed Synapse down the hallway, still feeling groggy from the fever. They squinted at the harsh white lights above. They rounded a corner into the commons area and were greeted with cheers. They scanned the room, confused. The room was filled mostly with paranormals, clearly visible from their unusual costumes. They were led to a table with 6 place settings and a large amount of soup. The smell made their mouths water. "Go ahead, sit down, eat," Forsyth encouraged. Without needing further prompting, they dug in. Emma, growing more curious, decided to ask about all the cheering. She cleared her throat. "It's Forsyth, right?" "Yes, child," he replied. "What's with all the paranormals cheering us on?" "Because, child, you 6 are the only ordinary humans to survive an introduction of the McAllister series into your DNA through reprogramming methods," he smiled. "And you, my dear, are the first to survive 2 major reprogrammings at once." "Funny, I don't feel so major," Emma remarked. "Finish your soup. It will help," Forsyth advised. It didn't take long for the teens to finish the meal. They agreed to go back to bed to rest and recover. As they left the commons, the room bid them farewell. "What was with the cheering, anyway?" "It made my headache worse," Michaela grumbled. "We're the first humans to survive becoming superheroes," Emma explained, summarizing what she had learned from Forsyth. "Funny, I don't feel so super," Trent groaned. "That's basically what I said," Emma replied. They climbed back into bed, exhausted and ready for more sleep. Days later, the Midnight Riders gathered in the commons area, each doing their own thing. Volt, seeking a less challenging opponent than Forsyth, chose to take on Synapse in a game. Raven, wearing her glasses, was engrossed in a novel, while Nighthawk, dressed in casual clothes, flannel shirt, ripped blue jeans, and worn-out shoes, lurked nearby. "So, do you think they'll wake up soon?" Synapse wondered, making his move on the board. "Leave them be, worrywart," Raven responded without looking up, flipping a page. "They've been asleep for quite a while," Nighthawk commented in agreement. Just then, everyone turned as they heard the familiar sound of slippers dragging lazily across the linoleum floor. One of the teens was finally up. Emma rounded the corner, her arms folded, her hair tousled and longer than before, sticking up from lack of care. She was still in the hospital gown and slippers. "Morning," she said softly, trying to sound more enthusiastic than she felt. "Good morning, dear. How are you feeling?" Raven asked, setting down her book. She was dressed in a t-shirt and shorts, her raven black hair tied back in a ponytail. "Much better after the soup, thanks." "Any aches or pains?" Nighthawk asked. She shook her head. Just an overwhelming need for a shower. Suddenly, Forsyth appeared out of nowhere, handing her a towel. "What shampoo do you usually use?" Emma shrieked at his sudden appearance. I'll take care of it," Raven volunteered, ushering her out of the room. "Thanks, does he always do that?" Emma asked, bewildered. "Yeah, all the time," Raven replied. "Don't thank me. I'm going to show you things your mama should have shown you." "What kind of things?" "What do you know when you're finally alive enough to appreciate being a woman?" "Come on." Volt overheard the conversation and turned to Nighthawk. "I feel sorry for that girl." "Why's that?" Nighthawk asked. "I've gotten a sponge bath from Raven before." "It's not a picnic," Volt said with a chuckle. The group laughed, lightening the mood. "So, anyone have suggestions about what to do with the DOD?" Nighthawk asked, turning the conversation to more serious matters. "What do you mean?" Synapse paused his game. "What can we do?" "Tell them the kids are dead," Volt suggested. "They have no records on file." "That's not a bad point," Synapse added. "We made a clean getaway. Even though Emma's screaming in the middle of the night wasn't ideal, it helps us cover our tracks." "But what if the teens want to keep their names?" "The law requires paranormals to be registered," Nighthawk pointed out. "First off, we don't know if they're paranormals yet, they haven't manifested. Second, we're federal agents. The DOD can kiss off for all I care," Synapse replied with an annoyed tone. "They haven't manifested because they haven't been awake long enough," Nighthawk chuckled. "What's all this incessant chattering about?" Forsyth asked, overhearing the conversation. "We're just figuring out what to do next with the teens," Synapse explained. "We proceed as planned," Forsyth said firmly. "The DOD cannot interfere with operations of other federal branches. They're minors and have no authority over them, especially when it comes to making them super soldiers. If that's true, then why were they introduced to the McAllister series in the first place?" Synapse mused, trying to piece it all together. "Maybe there's more to this than we know," Nighthawk suggested. "Perhaps. For now, they're here. Let's focus on their paperwork. Citizenship isn't as simple for them now as it was before they were dimension hoppers," Forsyth concluded, walking off. Michaela's head still throbbed as everyone filled out their paperwork. She felt mostly healthy, but the headache was making it hard to focus. Frustrated by her inability to concentrate, she thought to herself, "When is this going to stop? I've taken enough aspirin to kill a horse." She couldn't take it anymore. Grabbing her head in pain, she stood up abruptly and stormed out of the room. Forsyth watched her with interest as she faltered in the hallway, groaning from the intensity of the pain. She tried to punch the wall, creating a loud crash. Everyone quickly scrambled toward the noise. Raven and Emma arrived first to find Michaela standing in the hallway, her right arm extended, fist clenched. Her eyes were wide as she stared at the hole in the wall that her punch had created. "You all right, Mick?" Emma asked, placing a hand on her friend's shoulders. Michaela nodded, still in shock. "Yeah, I'm okay. I don't think that wall is, though." What happened here? Raven asked, bewildered. I just wanted to punch the wall. My head hurt, and I didn't want it to hurt anymore. It was driving me nuts, Michaela replied, still in shock. Days later, members of the Midnight Riders were scattered throughout the Commons area, each engaged in their own activities. Volt had opted to challenge Synapse. Instead of going for Foresight, Raven was reading a novel, and Nighthawk was dressed in casual clothes, flannel shirt, ripped jeans, and old shoes. So, do you think they'll ever wake up? Synapse asked, moving a piece on the board. Leave them alone, worrywart, Raven replied without looking up from her book. They've been asleep for a while now, Nighthawk said, agreeing. The group turned their attention to the sound of slippers shuffling across the linoleum. Emma appeared, rounding the corner, her arms folded. Her hair was a bit longer and sticking up messily from lack of care. She was still wearing the hospital gown and slippers. Morning, she said softly, trying to sound more energetic than she felt. Good morning, dear. How are you feeling? Raven asked, setting down her book. She was in a t-shirt and shorts, her hair pulled back into a ponytail. Much better after the soup, thanks. Any aches or pains? Nighthawk asked. She shook her head. Just an overwhelming need for a shower. Suddenly, Foresight appeared, handing her a towel. What shampoo do you use? Emma shrieked at his sudden appearance. I'll take care of it, Raven volunteered, ushering her out of the room. Thanks, does he always do that? Emma asked, bewildered. Yeah, all the time, Raven replied. Don't thank me. I'm going to show you things your mama should have taught you. What kind of things? What do you know when you've just started to enjoy being a woman? Come on. Volt overheard the conversation and turned to Nighthawk. I feel sorry for that girl. Why's that? Nighthawk asked. I've had a sponge bath from Raven before. It's not a picnic, Volt said, grinning. Everyone laughed, easing the mood. So, anyone have any ideas about what to do with the DoD? Nighthawk asked, turning the conversation to more serious matters. What do you mean? Synapse paused his game. What can we do? Tell them the kids are dead, Volt suggested. They have no records of the kids. Not a bad point, Synapse added. We made a clean getaway. Emma's screaming last night wasn't ideal, but it helps with the cover-up. But what if they want to keep their names? The law requires paranormals to register, Nighthawk pointed out. First off, we don't know if they're paranormals yet, they haven't manifested. Second, we're federal agents. The DoD can kiss off, Synapse said, irritated. They haven't manifested because they haven't been awake long enough, Nighthawk joked. What's with all the incessant chatter? Foresight asked, overhearing. We're figuring out what to do with the teens, Synapse explained. We proceed as planned, Foresight said, his tone firm. The DoD cannot interfere with other federal agencies. Besides, the teens are minors, and the department has no jurisdiction over them, even for super soldier programs. If that's true, why were they introduced to the McAllister series in the first place? Synapse asked, trying to piece things together. Maybe there's more to it than we know, Nighthawk suggested. Perhaps. For now, let's focus on their paperwork. Citizenship isn't as simple as it was before they became dimension hoppers, Foresight concluded, walking off. Michaela's head throbbed as everyone filled out their paperwork. She felt healthy, but the headache was unbearable. Her inability to focus frustrated her. When will this stop? She thought angrily. I've taken enough aspirin to kill a horse. Unable to endure it any longer, she jumped up from the table and marched out of the room. Foresight watched her with interest as she groaned in the hallway. She stopped in her tracks, clutching her head. Frustrated, she tried to punch the wall, resulting in a loud crash. Everyone rushed toward the noise. Raven and Emma arrived first, finding Michaela standing with her fist extended, staring at the hole in the wall. You okay, Mick? Emma asked, placing a hand on her friend's shoulder. Michaela nodded, still in shock. Yeah, I'm okay. I don't think the wall is, though. What happened? Raven asked, confused. I just wanted to punch the wall. My head hurt, and I couldn't take it anymore, Michaela explained, still showing little emotion other than shock. After a while, Volt stepped forward, a smile on his face, but Emma disappeared before he could reach her. He looked around the room, scanning the couch, trying to find any sign of her. He grew increasingly concerned. He quickly gathered a few of the others and formed a search team. Emma landed gently on what she thought were gym mats. She sat up and looked around, noticing the room was painted entirely in red. The ceiling arched slightly above where the mats ended, casting shadows under the dim candlelight. She continued exploring and found a beautifully decorated incense holder, which made her smile. But then, she met eyes with Raven, who looked completely confused. What are you doing here? Raven asked, clearly puzzled. I don't know. 1 minute, I was talking to Volt on the couch, and then I'm here, Emma replied with a shrug. Raven took a step back. Another manifestation. Huh? What does that mean? Emma asked, still confused. You had a soft landing, right? Raven began questioning her, and Emma nodded. But you came through the ceiling, didn't you? I'm not sure, Emma responded with a shrug. I saw you come right out of that shadow in the ceiling. With your skinny build, I'm not surprised, Raven said, but it was like you flew down, not wanting to hurt yourself. Before Emma could reply, the door flew open. Sorry, Raven. Looking for. It's you. Are you okay? Stephen burst in, running over to hug her. Yeah, Stephen, I'm fine. What's going on? Emma asked as she returned the hug. Volt thought you disappeared completely and gathered us to help look for you. Yeah, Volt. Round up the teens now. She's safe, Raven said, speaking into her comlink. Yeah, I think she can fly. Kylie had spent most of the day lying in bed, despite the soup. Her body felt like jello, and she could hardly move. Nausea kept her on edge, having already vomited twice that day. She tried to rest, but sleep was elusive as her stomach kept bothering her. Suddenly, she felt a chill wash over her, followed by something crawling over her toes, like something was covering them. She lifted the covers and looked down, only to see her toes covered in a strange silvery substance. The substance began to crawl up her feet, then her legs, sending a wave of panic through her. As it reached her hips, her gown also turned silver. What's going on? She gasped. Freya rushed into the room. What's wrong? I'm being covered in this silvery stuff, and it's up to my hips, maybe my stomach by now. Kylie cried, her voice shaking. Freya walked over and peered under the covers. The substance had reached the base of Kylie's breasts, coating the gown as well. What's happening? Kylie asked, pleading for answers. I think you're manifesting. Take some deep breaths and calm down, Freya instructed. Trent and Stephen ran into the room, seeing the silvery substance crawl up Kylie's arms and neck. Holy T-1000! Trent exclaimed. This only made Kylie more distressed. She could no longer scream, her body paralyzed by the strange transformation. The substance reached her face, turning everything into a bluish hue. Her vision blurred, but she still felt the substance covering her completely. I'm really scared now, Stephen admitted, his voice trembling. Don't want to end up like liquid metal? Trent joked, trying to lighten the mood. Yeah, basically, Stephen replied. I wonder if she'll be okay, or if she can turn back, Trent wondered aloud. I don't know. I just don't know, Stephen replied, worry clouding his thoughts. Stephen, still rattled by Kylie's manifestation, paced restlessly in the hangar bay. The recent events had left him uncertain of what to expect. Emma's situation weighed heavily on his mind. She and Jack had been best friends, and now, with everything that had happened, Stephen didn't know how to treat her. The bond they shared was different now. Could he talk to her the same way as he did with Jack? Would she even want to? His thoughts were interrupted when he suddenly felt an inexplicable chill. He looked around, but no one was approaching. His body tingled, and for a moment, he felt as though he was floating. He looked down, shocked to see his feet several inches off the ground. He floated toward the door, but as the wind shifted, he was suddenly pulled in the opposite direction, passing through walls as if he were a ghost. Screaming, he finally crashed onto a table in the commons area. Dazed, he stood up, only to see Volt, Synapse, Emma, and Nighthawk looking at him with confused expressions. Foresight walked into the room and smiled at him. "Congratulations, our fourth manifestation today," Foresight said. "I don't feel like it's something to celebrate," Stephen replied, still shaken. "All in good time, son. All in good time," Foresight said, beginning to walk away. "Hey, wait," Stephen called. Foresight stopped and turned around. "How's Kylie doing? Is she going to look like liquid metal forever?" "You mean her new form?" "No, of course not. She only shifts into it when using her powers," Foresight assured him. Emma sat quietly in the commons, still feeling unwell. She could read her magazine, but the joy she once found in it was gone. The reflection she saw in the mirror while with Raven felt like a fleeting glimpse of something beautiful, but she wasn't sure how to reconcile that with the confusion she felt inside. The paperwork she filled out earlier was both thrilling and overwhelming, especially when she wrote her new name. After all that, she was left with a heavy feeling in her chest. She had tried to comfort Michaela, who was adjusting to her new abilities, lifting gurneys without effort. Emma was happy for her friend, but she still couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. Volt passed by and noticed her expression. "What's wrong, girl?" he asked. Emma shook her head, keeping her focus on the magazine. "Nothing really. Don't lie to all Volt now. Tell me what's going on." She sighed, setting the magazine down but keeping her place with her finger. "I don't know. All the commotion lately is just wearing me out." "No, that's not it. Try again," Volt pressed with a knowing smile. Okay, Emma said, her voice trailing off. "What was that?" Volt blinked, confused. "What's what?" Emma shook her head again. "Maybe it was just a hot flash or something. My body adjusting to all the new hormones." She looked uncomfortable. "I feel kind of bloated, though." "You want me to get Foresight?" Volt offered, noticing her discomfort. She winced slightly. "I don't know, maybe." She nodded, clutching her stomach. "Only a couple of days as a woman, and it's already that time of the month." "I doubt it," Volt replied with a smile. Stephen exhaled in relief. "Good to know. So, do I have to look like a ghost when I use mine?" Foresight studied him closely. "You're not a ghost, Stephen. You're just intangible." "Intangible? You can't be harmed by physical means, like punches or bullets," Emma explained. "But someone like Trent, with his electricity, could still hurt you, right, Foresight?" Foresight nodded. "That's correct." Stephen nodded slowly, now understanding. "Oh, okay. Cool." Synapse was immersed in his favorite domain, cyberspace. The soft blue and white glow of the screen illuminated his face as he sipped his soda. Just as he got comfortable, the phone rang, interrupting his peaceful state. With a sigh, he answered the call. "Midnight Riders headquarters," he answered. "Hello, Synapse. What's the status?" came the voice, which could only belong to the Secretary of Paranormal Activity. "Well, sir, we've had 5 manifestations so far. Considering the circumstances, that's quite an accomplishment." "Any interpretations of their abilities?" "I can't give you all the details since the teens haven't fully figured them out yet. But, Trent has night vision, can throw electricity, and we haven't discovered anything that hurts him yet. Kylie seems to wield Earth's elemental force, Freya's working with her. As for Stephen, I think he manipulates air, though it's still unclear. Emma teleported with shadows, and Raven believes she might be able to fly. Lastly, Michaela's a telekinetic powerhouse. That's all I need for now." I'm keeping the Secretary of Defense busy for the moment. Have they mentioned anything about whether they'd like to move? No, nothing like that yet. Why? Just for personal reasons. I'll have to record it later. Well, that's all I know, sir. A scream echoed through the halls, and Synapse sighed. What was that? The secretary asked. Business as usual around here, sir. By now. Synapse quickly hung up the phone and rushed toward the source of the noise. Daniel, always a heavy sleeper, didn't wake easily, but today was different. He woke up with an aching body, stretched, and trudged out of the makeshift room where everyone had been sleeping on gurneys. He headed to the bathroom, half asleep. But when he walked in and saw Emma, his eyes widened, fully awake. What the hell? She exclaimed, covering her mouth in shock. Michaela stepped out of a stall, saw Daniel, and froze. After blinking twice, she screamed at the top of her lungs, startling both Emma and Daniel. They shielded their ears from the shrill sound. Two of you now? Michaela asked, panting with shock. What? Daniel asked, his voice now coming from Emma's mouth. Emma pointed at the mirror. Look. Synapse dashed in briefly. Whoa. Wrong room. He hurriedly left, and a moment later, Raven entered, stopping in her tracks, staring at Daniel. Daniel, gathering all his courage, turned slowly toward the mirror. He gasped. Standing next to him was Emma, and the two were virtually identical. He spun around to look at the others, seeking answers. What the hell happened? He asked, now speaking in his own voice. Michaela screamed again. Raven stepped forward. Look at me, Daniel. Focus and let it happen. Let what happen? He asked, a tingling sensation creeping over him. Michaela screamed again. Michaela, if you can't handle this, leave the room, Raven ordered. Turning back to Daniel, she continued, good. Now look in the mirror. He did, and his reflection now matched Raven's. What the hell? He gasped as his voice came out as hers. Oh my God, he closed his eyes, feeling the tingling sensation again. Great, we've got ourselves a shapeshifter, Raven announced. Congratulations, Daniel, Emma smiled. Daniel opened his eyes to see his own reflection again. He sighed in relief. Good to see me again, he chuckled. Nighthawk shook his head. 6 manifestations in 2 days. Congratulations, Department of Defense. You still think they're behind all of this? Forsyth asked. Who else would it be? They made their move by sending Marshal Bryan, Nighthawk pointed out. Who's to say the man in black wasn't some spec? Ops. Guy in disguise. Yeah, right. Americans spying on Americans, great plan, Synapse muttered. The kids are traumatized, Volt reflected. You should have seen Kylie's face when she manifested. I hope I never have to witness that again, Freya sighed, her voice thick with emotion. We have their ID papers and have helped with the manifestation process. What do we do now? Raven asked. I've been looking into that, Nighthawk replied. I've found a place where they can go to school without facing ridicule. What? Where? The group asked in unison. The door to the room slid open. A man in his late 20s, dressed in a black pinstriped suit and carrying a briefcase, entered. Why, Middle Grove High School, of course, he said with a smirk. Many students call it Mutant High. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Professor Sullivan, the dean of the school, Nighthawk announced. I've taken quite an interest in their case, Professor Sullivan began, and Miss Morgan can also attend our college branch nearby, Sullivan University. Let me guess, Mutant U. Synapse teased. Not quite, Professor Sullivan replied, but I'm sure she'll be very comfortable here. Why don't we ask them? It would be fair, Raven suggested. One step ahead of you, Raven, Nighthawk said with a smile. I never show anyone the door without consulting them first. He pressed a button on the table. All right, you can come in now, guys. He released the button, and the teens entered the room, their faces lighting up when they saw the professor. Chuck, they chorused in unison. How'd you get here? Chuck chuckled. I told you I had some business to take care of. The Midnight Riders exchanged puzzled looks. Wait a second, you know this guy? Synapse asked, glancing at the nearest teen. Stephen nodded. Of course we do. He's our game master. You're what? Volt asked, raising an eyebrow. Game master, the creator of the story in our role-playing game, Daniel explained. Volt looked lost. What's a role-playing game? I'll show you later, Synapse replied, understanding the term. All right, back to business, Nighthawk continued. This is Professor Sullivan, the Dean of Middle Grove High School, and he has scholarships for each of you. Emma, there's also a scholarship for you at Sullivan University. Emma's eyes lit up. I can go to college? Yes, that's part of the business I mentioned, Professor Sullivan added. Forsyth observed the professor carefully, analyzing him. Upon deeper consideration, he realized Professor Sullivan was a minor precognitive. He smiled to himself, allowing the commotion to unfold. Cool. Where do we sign? I mean, if Chuck's such a good GM, he must be an awesome dean, Trent commented. Yeah, I want a pen, Michaela added eagerly. Nighthawk handed out pens to each teen, and Professor Sullivan placed the scholarship and admissions papers in front of them. After reading the conditions and instructions, the teens signed the papers. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know, Professor Sullivan said as they finished. August 25, 2001. The first day of school had arrived. Kylie, Michaela, Trent, Daniel, and Stephen took a deep breath as they climbed the stairs of Middle Grove High School. The school building, nearly 30 years old, had been renovated over the summer, giving the red brick a fresh look. Students filled the lawn and hallways, all dressed in the school uniform, white button-up shirts, blue slacks for the boys, blue plaid skirts for the girls, black socks, and dark brown shoes. Ties were required on occasion. You know, I really wish Emma were here too, Kylie admitted. Yeah, it's just not the same without her, Michaela agreed. Come on, we can visit her on the weekends. She'll be fine, she's joining a sorority and hanging out with frat guys, Trent said, trying to cheer them up. The girls giggled in response. He's right, you know. She'll be fine. We'll still have weekends with her, Stephen offered. The 5 teens entered the double doors, took another deep breath, said their goodbyes, and split off to their respective classes. Emma Morgan stepped out of her new car. Well, it was new to her, though it was nearly 40 years old. She admired the campus buildings, which looked like castles plucked straight from Europe, with tan stones and reddish-brown trim. She smiled at the architecture before heading to her first class, literature. She rolled her eyes as she stuck the paper with her class schedule back in her purse, feeling the weight of loneliness creeping in. She walked briskly, trying to shake off the feeling. Around the corner, she encountered a group of guys in Letterman jackets who stopped talking when they saw her. One of them whispered, though loud enough for her to hear, "Check out the new girl." A chorus of catcalls and appreciative comments followed. Emma, though flattered, had to get to class. She pressed on with a little bounce in her step. As she walked, she clutched her binder tightly and heard footsteps approaching. Butterflies formed in her stomach, and she bit her lower lip. "Hey, wait up!" a guy's voice called. She stopped and turned to see a guy running toward her. While he wasn't wearing a Letterman jacket, he was somewhat cute. He wore a loose sweater, tan pants, and Dr. Martens boots. He stopped a few feet in front of her, catching his breath. He flashed a smile and extended his hand. "Hey, I'm Ryan Harris. I think we're in literature together. You're Emma Morgan, right?" She gave him a curious look, as if asking, "And why is that important?" "Yes, that's me," she replied with a nod. They started walking together. "So, you came here from New York, right? How did you know that?" "Well, when Professor Sullivan hands out a scholarship to someone who doesn't exactly have a big reputation, word gets around. Not that you're some no-name, of course," he added, realizing he was digging himself deeper. "Look, I know the professor doesn't just hand out scholarships to anyone. It took me forever to get one myself. To get one out of the blue like that, you must be really smart. I've heard that before, she said, still sizing him up. He hesitated, then asked, would you mind if I carried your books? Maybe we could grab coffee sometime, or a movie, or, anything. She laughed and handed him her books. Coffee sounds good. The rest, you'll have to earn that. They both chuckled as he opened the door for her, and they walked inside together. Don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content,